I laugh when people say, I can't wait for you to come here and change my life. And I have to remind them that's not what I do. You are controlling your life. Like I may be able to ignite some of the fuses that are happening in your world, but at the end of the day, you control the change. And I tell
Mhm.
the directors and senior execs the same thing. If I leave, your company tomorrow may be the same if you don't change.
Welcome to Career Coaching Secrets, the podcast where we talk with successful career coaches on how they built their success and the hard lessons they learned along the way. My name is Davis Wynn, and I'm the founder of Purple Circle, where we help career coaches scale their business to $100,000 years, $100,000 months, and even $100,000 weeks. Before Purple Circle, I've grown several 7 and 8 figure career coaching businesses myself, and have been a consultant at 2 career coaching businesses that are doing over $100 million each. Whether you're an established coach or building your practice for the first time, you'll discover the secrets to elevating your coaching business.
Welcome to Career Coaching Secrets Podcast. I'm Kevin, and today we are joined by Manny. He's been a career coach for, you said, over 32 years, which is crazy. And he's also the founder of Making Time Count. Welcome to the show, Manny.
Thank you, brother. It's good to be here, man. Appreciate you guys inviting me
Yeah.
over.
Yeah, it's a pleasure, man. I mean, I was real excited for this interview because from the back and forth we had, I just loved your energy. And even pre-podcast, I just love your energy. To be honest, 32 years is not a small time frame. That's almost as old as me, honestly. So I'm a little bit older. But let's start at the very beginning. Let's hear the origin story, the lore. What was the moment that you realized that you wanted to not only become a coach, but to make a business out of it? I would love to hear your story.
Yeah, well, Kevin, man, I'll tell you, I think a lot of folks made some huge changes in their lives at the height of COVID, right? I actually retired the same year that we had that pandemic. So my transition during that height was really a turning point for me. After decades of structure and service, I suddenly found myself asking, what's next? And not just for me, but for my family as well. And that journey showed me really how deeply personal and challenging career transitions can be. So I thought about it for a while. I kind of teased myself with what was next. What am I going to probably do? And like everyone, retirement sounds like a great thing when you're in the middle of it, and then all of a sudden you're in the middle of it, and you're thinking, man, there's got to be more. So,
Yeah.
that journey pretty much showed me how deeply personal and challenging it could be for a lot of folks, not just me, but for a lot of folks. So now I'm fortunate. Now I get to help others navigate those same kinds of questions that I had, finding some clarity, purpose, direction. When things feel uncertain, we're hopeful that there is never going to be another pandemic, right? But I think the structure of life has its own challenges, and people go through a lot, especially when they're trying to think about what's next in their lives. I'm a pretty passionate person about helping people build
Yeah.
careers that actually fit into who they are and just basically where they want to go. That kind
Yeah.
of helped me kind of curve my all my pulses into what I really wanted to do, and I've been fortunate, man. It's been kind of organic, and it's been happening. So just blessed every day.
Yeah. And as you're making your career transition, if I have things right, you were serving in the military, right? Specifically
Yeah, I
the Air
was. I
Force.
was. I served for 32 years, almost 9 months. I can get down to the days and the hours possibly, but it's funny how you don't realize, I came into the military just to do 4 years. And you might hear everyone that you talk to about the military life with the same goals, right? We wanted some structure, some discipline. And next thing you know, you find a community of people who are kind of on the same wave of taking care of people. So it lasted a little, probably a little longer than I thought it would. But at the end of the day, no regrets. It changed my life. It gave me an opportunity to travel the world, and it
Mm.
benefited my family to elevate, their future, in the essence of what they wanted to do with themselves. I got friends all over the world, which is great, right? It's a nice tagline to
Yeah.
say, but you really hold on to the people aspect of the work that was being done because you realize how important those people are to that mission. And so
Mm.
I was very fortunate to have had an opportunity to lead, but then to also follow a lot of great people.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you for your service. My
Thank you.
father was actually in the Air Force as well.
Oh man, check it out. That's so
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah. It's kind of crazy. But back to your story for a second. I'm very curious because You were in the military for quite a long time. That's not a short amount of time, right? And so you mentioned the career transition. So what were some of the things that were coming up as you were like coming up towards retirement, I guess?
Man, well, yeah, Kevin, I'll tell you, anxiety. You know, you start building on things that you think you're aware of, and it's interesting when people plot retirements. You know, it's almost like, man, this is the goal, right? I'm actually still have all my limbs. I can still I'm still active, but you know, there's a turn, a turn that comes with having done something for so long, and then now you're like, okay, now what? Like, and sad to say, a lot of folks struggle, especially those coming out of the military. And I don't really like to just say the military focus, but you know, if you're in a position, I'll give you a perfect example. I did some work with a company, and in the scope of the percentage of the folks that were there, senior directors, right? Folks that have been with the company about 18, 19 years. But a lot of them, you know, after a conversation, realized that they've been doing something that they probably didn't really enjoy. You know, they just did it for whatever reason they were locked into doing it. You know, mortgage, kids, you know, college, whatever you name the challenge. And but they were never really satisfied with their own personal goals and their own personal happiness. And I think that happens a lot for the military is where, you know, you venture out. Anyone who decides to serve for any amount of time eventually has to go back to society. And that transition alone is very difficult when there is no structure, right? You know, you're kind of told what to do and then you do it. And that's direction. And people need that type of
Yeah.
structure. But when now you're responsible for your own movements, you're kind of just sitting in the chair waiting for that phone call. And
Yeah.
you know, I was a part of that. I mean, I literally, when I finished my tenure, you know, I would carry three phones. And I tell folks I went from having three phones to no calls. You know, you think about that, it's kind of looming. You know, it'll haunt you. You're thinking, man, nobody really cares about me. Nobody really wants to, you know, talk to me. But they're just in their eyes, they just want to leave you alone. They give you space. So they're saying thank you for everything you did, and now, you know, we don't need to bother you anymore. So that alone is a structural change in transformation for someone who's actually been in a position for so long.
Yeah, it's like a huge identity change too. And
Man, big time.
yeah,
You-
yeah,
that's a struggle that a lot of folks go through, and unfortunately, some of our veterans, they it hits them pretty hard. They went from having purpose, and now they're just trying to figure out life. You know, so yeah, I always try to make sure that that's the key to where I am in my coaching business. Is if you can relive an opportunity for them to feel like they have purpose, that in itself is, you know, that's a powerful, powerful word. You know, I got so many stories. One thing I love about Davis and what he shares is the opportunity to have testimonials. You go to my website, we have, you know, there's some folks, but they're not live, right? Like his are, mine are just words by the people. But man, some of the changes that you are able to affect in people's lives is so powerful. So and another reason why I gravitated to this podcast is that, you know, it's life changing and coaching for a lot of people who are not thinking about scaling money. And in that essence, they just want to help somebody find what they're looking for, you know?
yeah. And I know the work that you do is so meaningful because I'm not sure if you know this, but I was personally for me, I was a pharmacist and I was working at the VA for a bit. So
Brother.
I got to
And thank
see
you for your
like
service.
just for a little bit. It was only
Nah,
like
you don't realize. I tell folks all the time that they don't understand that, you know, especially folks who work in the VA. You know, you can work anywhere, you know, but
yeah.
you choose to work in that establishment, and I'll tell you that's huge. So thank you for that.
Yeah, well, it really opened my eyes. And then one of my buddies, he actually retired probably like a few years ago, but like a few years later, he actually took his own life and stuff too. And
Yeah,
it's
man.
like
Yeah,
that's a it's like the stuff that no one really is aware about
there you
sometimes
go.
too.
There you go.
And
I didn't
so,
I didn't want to I didn't want to bring those
yeah,
topics up into calm, but I'll tell you, it happens, and it happens a lot. And unfortunately, you know, those kind of examples that I use to identify folks is exactly what takes them to that place. You know, and I truly believe we all go through it. You know, it's some form of depression when you're deep, when you have something that you truly believe in, and then all of a sudden it's gone, it's taken away.
Yeah.
And now what? And a lot of folks have a hard time trying to figure out that what part. So, that for me, that's probably the most rewarding part of the coaching business is when you witness those breakthrough moments. I've dealt with people who were there, and all of a sudden, in just opportunity, just to find a little bit more clarity in their lives, they end up doing some great things.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I want to kind of ask you too. It's like, okay, you're in this transition, you decided to do coaching. And let's kind of fast forward to now. Like, who are the people that you help and what do you kind of help them with? I would love to kind of hear like the evolution of
Yeah, no, man,
into
I'll
your
tell
coaching
you, it's
business.
crazy because getting out and especially starting this business, there's a lot of, no one, how do I get referrals? How do I find people to coach? I mean, it's kind of, I think that's the top five questions that every coach goes through, right? Why is the phone not ringing? But for me, a lot of it was, I have an opportunity to work with professionals, right? Just that's how I lock it in and where they're at in their crossroads. But many of them are transitioning out of the military, shifting career, during midlife. They're trying to figure out maybe I did something too long, and like I mentioned earlier, I'm not happy about it. And eventually, they're just reevaluating their own path. They're trying to figure out some major life changes. Maybe they're retiring and they still want to do something. I think the joke in the military was always I don't have to do anything. I could be a greeter at Walmart. But you put it in perspective. The military is a format for leadership. So, when I get an opportunity to do keynotes or speak, do events, workshops, I try to make sure and embrace people to hire military. Like,
Mm,
there's a huge window of opportunity that sometimes is let go because they just don't think that the military brings anything to the table, and I beg to differ. I always tell them you don't realize that you're losing out on a lot of great potential. So a lot of my clients are high achievers. These guys have been doing stuff. They spent years, sometimes decades, serving others. Climbing up the ladder. You know what I mean? But sometimes they're asking the same question: what's next? So, what do I really want? How do I make a change without losing everything I've built? You know what I mean?
yeah.
So that transformation, I love to see them. I love to help them achieve it. The confidence, kind of get them back in the right direction. So we work together to reconnect with their values and their identity and what truly matters. So hopefully create some type of a lasting effect. And that for me
Yeah.
that's huge. That's the biggest part of it.
Yeah, it's really interesting because I think through my experience with people from the military background, they make some of the best like entrepreneurs, entrepreneurs, like, and we're starting to see it right now because like if you look at social media, like with people like Jocko or like
Yeah,
other
there you
special
go.
forces people,
There you go.
they're like doing business like workshops and stuff now too.
Yeah, yeah,
So you
yeah.
definitely have a point there.
So I think a lot of folks, and I'm sorry, Kevin, I didn't mean to interrupt,
No, go
but
ahead.
but I think you hit it on the head. We don't exploit the opportunity because we think it's different. And one thing that I realized going into corporate was that they still have a chain of command, they still have a mission and a goal, and they have people. But what I found interesting is that the same dynamics in the military and why people get out was because they didn't feel like they were being taken care of. And that's the same aspect that happens in corporate America. So I always influence, some positivity with, man, you're taking care of your people, your mission is going to get done. Your end goal, your bottom line is going to be met if you're doing the right things by your people because they're the ones doing it. So it helps to have those conversations with senior directors, senior execs who are in that position or have those titles to make a difference for their people because then they get a better understanding of the work ethic and then really see how I can make a difference. And in COVID, we saw that. You know, I mean, it's funny we don't talk about it now, but you remember that Great Resignation?
Yeah, yeah,
We
yeah,
we
yeah.
had folks just dropping like flies out of jobs, right? And I don't, man, COVID taught me about myself, and I don't need you anymore. So that was a highlight for me to really embrace the fact that it all goes back to humanity, man. If we're taking care of our people and they're happy, they will do the job.
Yeah. Thank God for your work because you're almost like the Rosetta Stone. It's very similar. Like you were talking about the dynamics are very, very similar, right? And it reminds me of how languages are like the romantic languages of like Spanish, French, and Italian. There's
Yeah, man.
similar
It,
dynamics,
it,
but a little different.
it is crazy, man. So I guess my end goal for everyone is everyone's not chasing the next job. You know what I mean? But you have to find some kind of intentionality to make sure that they understand that most people are value driven and they just need a renewed sense of purpose. I'm fortunate to talk to a lot of folks now that have transitioned and are thriving in these corporate jobs, because they fully embrace what their goal is now, but they have a purpose again, to do something.
Mm.
So I think that for that is huge, and why I
Yeah.
continue to do this.
Yeah. Yeah. I know we've kind of highlighted like the importance of this, which I think is probably the most important thing. But let's kind of talk about like the business side and how that kind of works too. Let's talk about the marketing thing first of all. Like, how do your potential clients like find you? What kind of marketing are you doing right now at the moment?
Well, you mentioned the platform. My main social platform is LinkedIn as well,
Mm.
and I was fortunate. I had well, he was young when I was younger, but I had a young NCO supervisor who basically said, "Man, start an account." And this was years ago. I'm talking about like maybe I had, I don't know, 100 followers or something. But I remember that he was very adamant that this is not forever. And how we establish ourselves is relationships. So I was fortunate in that capacity. Now, you asked me about marketing and the name. I will tell you that I'm probably one of the anomalies of business because I've been saying making time count for as long as I've been in the military. So I
Yeah.
was already doing marketing for a brand that didn't exist. But in the military circuit, it was well known, right? I used to carry a challenge coin that said, "Don't count time, make time count." And it wasn't until after I retired that my one of my sons during COVID actually said, "Hey, Dad, what you gonna do with that whole making time count thing? You've been killing us with it, all our lives." And I teased around with, I gotta figure out what I'm gonna do here. And eventually, it came out. You know what? I think I'm gonna tackle the business world and the coaching world and see how this transition goes. And eventually it happened. But all my clients, Kevin, they come through referrals.
Mm.
People that I've either served with, led, mentored, or served with during my 32 years in the military. Others find me through LinkedIn, where I share insights and career transition stuff. But at the end of the day, they're all looking for someone who understands the weight of change and they know
Mhm.
I've walked that path. So credibility is everything. Yeah, I truly believe that a lot of folks don't understand the power of being authentic, and if people know you, then they trust you, right? I had a conversation with someone about authenticity not too long ago, and I asked them, so think about someone that you know that you trust. More than
Yes.
likely, you trust them because you admire them, not from an executive position, but maybe because you're really listening to what they're saying and you trust what they're saying. So that
Mhm.
to me is really the purpose of being authentic, is that you have an opportunity to have a conversation and people take what you're saying for truth. And if
Mm.
if you know the people that have, I tell people all the time, if you have my phone number, then you're in the circle. You know what I mean? So
Mm.
so that is that's a huge kind of a tagline that I like to share with folks. But authenticity, man, that we have a lot of mistrust out there, and in both
Yeah.
business and personal. And if you lose sight of that, man, you lose a whole lot of your community.
Yeah. So it sounds like you might share stories on like LinkedIn and stuff of
Yeah, oh, yeah,
authentic
yeah.
moments
After
and
this, man,
stuff.
we're
And
gonna have
like,
to connect.
yeah, for sure, dude. Like, I'm already on your like LinkedIn right now. I'm about to
Yeah, yeah.
like
You
get connected.
you'll see. I try to position everything that I write about in life as a learning
Yeah.
lesson, and I always try to make sure people understand it's the little things, man. It's just the little things. You can't get hyped up about numbers and scope. And if there's something really small that happened in my life, I'm sharing it because there's a lesson there.
Okay. Let's talk about the actual business though. Okay, people are finding you. they're interested in working with you, what do your coaching modalities look like? I know some people offer one-on-one coaching, some people offer group coaching.
Yeah, yeah.
What kind of things have you kind of gravitated to, I guess?
So I tend to kind of kill two birds, if I can say so. So I'm fortunate, right? When I get invited to a company to do some work with them and their teams, more than likely I've already set up a conversation with that senior exec or whoever extended the invitation, and then I end up coaching them. So it works out really. The duality of that helps kind of take the referrals to a different place. You mentioned the one-on-ones. I do those. I've had small teams, to talk team dynamics. The scale of what I do has a huge focus on how I practice, kind of practice what you preach, right?
Mm,
I don't try to bring my experience to the table all the time. Like there's a lot of people that I'm fortunate to know who are willing to share their stories. So sometimes I invite those same people based on the dynamics that team may be having. I don't
mm,
talk about time management. That's not in my wheelhouse. Making
mm,
time count is really having you absorb, what's going on in your life and then seeing if you're actually utilizing the time correctly. So I don't
mm.
go in there trying to change people. And, this is something, and you'll appreciate this, Kevin, because I'm sure you speak to a lot of people. But
I do.
I laugh when people say, I can't wait for you to come here and change my life. And I have to remind them that's not what I do. You are controlling your life. Like I may be able to ignite some of the fuses that are happening in your world, but at the end of the day, you control the change. And I tell
Mhm.
the directors and senior execs the same thing. If I leave, your company tomorrow may be the same if you don't change. You know what I mean? So that
Yeah.
helps kind of tell the story a little better that, hey, let's invite Manny down for making time count. I heard he's doing some great work out there, and he's after he leaves, things will be better. I go, I don't know. After I leave, I hope things get better too. Uh, I worked with a company and I share this publicly. And when I finished speaking with them, I was coaching the exec, and I remember asking him, and this was like months later, "Hey man, how's your team doing?" He says, "Man, after you came and spoke to them, I lost about 15 to 16% of the people that were in that room." And that could be panic, right? Oh my God, what did I say? But the reality was, I told him, I said, you have a retention problem because it wasn't what I said that sparked what there is. Why did they left? Because apparently you're not doing your part, and that was a huge open eyes. And of course, he said to me, "Well, can you come back?" And I go, "Of course. Let's talk retention now. And what keeps people moving in the right direction." So those things are very important. But if a company doesn't understand that, man, people are going to be leaving all the time.
Yeah.
They say the grass is always greener, and then some people will fight. The pessimist will say, "But you got to water the grass." Well, damn it, water your freaking grass.
Yeah, I think sometimes people forget that the worst coaching arrangements are like when you're the savior all the
Yeah,
time, like a victim
yeah,
savior
and,
type of thing. And great
and
coaches are a catalyst, man. Like as you
brother,
mentioned.
yeah, man.
Yeah.
I tell folks I lived in your space. Like I know some of the challenges that you've been in, but everyone has something going on. You know what I mean? And that opens the door for imposter syndrome, right? I don't want to be the guy that walks into a shop always happy about, I have bad days too. But, the reality
Mhm.
is that if you connect with the people and you find the space to know that they're dealing with something, then it's going to be easier for them to understand that you're coming from a good place. You know,
Yeah.
I don't try to hoo everyone or, walk in with, a band behind me. I try to make sure I can meet you where you're at, and then we'll figure this out together.
Yeah. It's really interesting because, like I said, your work is so impactful, right? And it sounds like you're working with teams and organizations and companies, right? And so, of course, if you're open to it, you don't have to give any hard numbers. But one of the things that a lot of coaches struggle is with pricing strategies. And so, like, when you go into an organization, like, how do you structure your pricing? Is it like project based, value based, retainers? There's so many different models, right?
Yeah,
But
yeah,
I'm
there
kind
is.
of curious, which ones
There
have
is.
you
So project
gravitated to?
base is huge for me, and I try to make sure I shared this with someone that I knew that was starting a coaching business. And it's funny, not everyone is going to be Simon Sinek, right? Not everyone's going to come in there like Brene Brown. No one. We have folks out there who have capped where they are based on the novelty of who they are. But I tell folks, especially if you're looking to come into this space, is that you got to be honest with yourself, right? First, you have to have something to say because you can't scale a price without having words that matter to someone that's willing to bring you in for a cost of where you think you need to be. Now, I'm big about big audiences, right? So if you have an audience, let's just say 800. I spoke at an event, I had 800 folks in there. Um, the fee is going to be less than it would be if it was a smaller audience because I know the impact I'm going to have on an audience out there is going to generate more calls later down the road. So I rather invite the crowds in than base my whole the scope of my business on the small settings. Because if you're
Mm,
reaching climax once, that's not going to be business, right? That's just you're
yeah.
just lucky. But if you're at a scope where you're thinking about the many and they will assist the many, then that will help you generate more funds and more calls throughout the year. So I try to make sure that I'm very cautious about cost and how I put out pricing because my intent here is really to help, right? The more folks that I'm able to reach, the better, the lines, those three phones that I had in the early stages of the conversation will keep ringing. So I try to make sure that I'm honest with myself. And of
Mhm.
course, look, I challenge myself, right? I've been on many stages throughout my career, but I always think if I'm in the audience, what do I want to hear? Like, what's my takeaway?
Mm,
Because I've been in those audiences where crickets. The guy
yeah.
just bombed a joke that he was practicing for months, and yet,
Yeah.
and you know the punchline better than he does. So I try to be as honest as possible with myself, the message, of course, and again, it goes back to authenticity. You're building a culture
Mm,
for people to be engaged as a community. You got to have some meaning behind it, and it has to be purposeful. Yeah, yeah, and thank you for asking, man, because a lot of folks don't understand that. They're looking for those. Hey, I'm going to charge $10,000 for an event, and okay, that's cool. So what happens in 2 days?
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's really interesting to see people's different takes on people too. And thank you for just sharing
Yeah,
your
man.
thought
Of
process
course.
around that because people are struggling with it. Which leads me to the next question too. Like, you've been in business for quite a while now. And so I guess where do you want your coaching to a business to take you in the next few years? Do you have any secret dreams, big ambitions? Are you thinking about scaling, hiring more
Yeah,
coaches? Love to hear your
I
thoughts.
like the word scale is funny because you step on a scale, the numbers lie, right? And so you don't know what you're walking on until you're actually on it, or should I say in
Yeah.
it. But I'm right now I'm focusing on growing the coaching practice. Hopefully to reach a little bit more people in career transition, the folks who are really dealing with it. I realize there's a lot more of those people out there than they are people just looking to certify their own ambitions, especially veterans and mid-career professionals. I think I'd like to probably start opening up more programs, more group programs as well. You mentioned those. Those work very well for me because it's interesting enough. There's a lot of isolation in business, so folks think that they're the only ones dealing with the things that they're dealing with. And when you get them in a group setting, more of a team concept, they understand they're more accessible when they're built together. They're a team of togetherness. So I'm looking to probably develop some accessibility to build strong and engaged communities. At the end, this is all about purposeful growth, man. I'm just trying to make
Yeah.
sure in Manny's world of I would love to grow a community around the mantra of making time count. If you get up in the morning
Mm,
and you ask yourself, how am I going to make time count today? Then I already have the win. You know what I mean?
mm,
When people feel supported, they feel challenged, and they feel like they're connected, man, that content is engaging, bro, and that just inspires growth. I received man, just the other day on LinkedIn. It's funny, but I just did a course in Ohio, and the young lady wrote on LinkedIn, and I was like, wow, it's huge because she got it. Like, room full of people, but she understood exactly what it was. What is it to you that you're doing that may be consuming more of the time that you need for yourself?
Mm,
So on the coaching side, I'm working to develop some programs and workshops that, that you can reach more people while still delivering meaningful and personalized, transformative, like conversation. At the core, that's what it's about, man. Helping people,
yeah,
leading with
yeah,
purpose, really, helping them lead with purpose and on their terms.
yeah, yeah. You mentioned something really interesting about challenges, right? And helping people through these challenges. And so I'm kind of curious, as you're running this business and as you have a clear mission in your mind, I can see it, right? Just like the military, you have a mission, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And so what are some challenges or bottlenecks that you're noticing in your coaching business right now that most people wouldn't see from the outside, I guess?
I think for me is really trying to find coaches in the same network space that are just real. I think a lot of folks jump into this business, aspect because they think, man, if he can do it, you know what I mean? So they don't realize that there's an opportunity to just be you, and it let's just, for example, right, hypothetically, you get on a stage or you're out there and you got your pom poms on and you got all the branding and you got, the books. They think that's what they need to be credible. And so to me, I see a lot of that being very plastic. And
Mm,
and so they jump into these arenas where people are really trying to make a difference, and then they kind of soil it for the rest of the folks that are actually, you know, trying to establish a good, authentic leadership development style. Well, I remember when you brought up Hendra, which, man, thank you for that, because
yeah,
that the name
yeah,
always sparks some goodness in my life, and hopefully he'll hear me tell him. But Hendra is one of these people, man, that if you don't know what he does, you'll never know what he does. But you gotta ask
yeah,
what he does. You know what I mean? Like I'll give you a for instance, man, because you travel and when you're walking down the street, man, there's some powerful people that you walk right by. And I mean powerful because they bring so much good energy. But you'll never know this unless you actually stop them and talk to them. I was getting a haircut as if I need a haircut, right?
same.
I went to go get a haircut, and it's a pretty secure. You got to dial the guy's code, and the door opens up. There's an administrator in the front, and when I opened the door and I saw him, man, he just has so much good energy. So I just asked him, man, who are you and what do you do? And that to me projected this life, like he's happy, man. I want that. Like I want to know so I could be just as happy. You know what I'm saying? So that's the kind of person and those are the type of people that I want to surround myself with. People who are energetic, people who have seen crisis but have gone through it, resiliency. Oh my God. In
Mm,
the military, man, it's so easy. They've told us and they told me for many years, just take a knee. Just take a knee. But if you take a knee, you're lacking your leadership capability, right?
mm,
They see you weaker if you take a knee. So we don't take knees. We don't tell people that we're hurt or sick or I can't miss a day of work. You know what I mean? I got to show up because they need me. And you sell that to yourself like a tattoo, man. And it becomes part of your DNA. So I, we have to be more open to people's issues, man. Vulnerability is everything in this business. And if you're not willing to, because we're not psychologists, right? We're not going to sit down and analyze what's going on in your life. My role is to really get you back on track because I know that we have been through so much. If anything, what COVID taught us was that you're going to get through this. Like at one point, people were going like, "Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God," and school closures, churches, anything that had to do with exercise, fitness centers, gyms were closed. There was no release. Even entertainment.
yeah,
If you turn on the TV just thinking that you're gonna have an opportunity to feel good, you're watching a sports game and they had cardboard audiences. So if that doesn't bring a reality to your life, you gotta go, man, I got through this. It's gonna be all right. And so my
yeah,
job is really to, man, my role in life is really to remind you that you're gonna be all right. This is just
mm,
one of those obstacles. and you're gonna get through this again. You know.
Yeah, definitely. I agree with you about that whole COVID thing and the lacking of connection and feeling supported sometimes too. And that's why I was saying you're doing like God's work because a lot of times people take their own lives away because they feel so isolated, alone,
Yeah.
and they feel
Yeah,
like all
man.
this weight. But before we end, I want to play one last game with you.
Yeah. I love it.
It's called Good Investment, Bad Investment. And so
Okay.
I'm curious about what's been your best business investment on your coaching business? And what's the worst investment that you kind of wish you didn't make made and wish you could get your money back from? I would love to hear
Man,
both.
brother, there's a list. How long is this podcast?
If you can keep it to like 5 minutes because we're going to have time soon, that'd be
Truthfully,
perfect.
truthfully, I've been fortunate. I think I've had better investments because of the networking that I've had an opportunity to be part of. Sometimes people's faults become your greatness, right? Your lessons learned. So I've been fortunate, man. I had some good colleagues and good friends out there that were in the same space, and they helped maneuver some of the mistakes that they made. And when you find people like that, those are great fortunes, right? Because they took the dollar hit so that you don't have to, and that's something pure about the people that you want to surround yourself with. Marketing for me was something that was interesting because I did some ambassadorship for a company, and they wanted to utilize the Making Time Count brand. I mean,
Hmm.
I went through the trademark. I'm registered, right? So, but it was out of the kindness and the loyalty that I had for the person. I really respected that individual, and I still do. I mean, I didn't lose face with that. We just went in a different direction, and I realized that I was sharing a lot of input to the things. They gave me a huge, like, open platform and said, "This is your space. We will brand Making Time Count any way you want." So I was like, "Oh wow, this is great."
Wow.
So
Yeah.
they were making T-shirts. My marketing team was getting with their marketing team, and hey, we would like to see this displayed on a shirt. And man, it was like fire, right? I was thinking, who does that, right? Who gets a carte blanche on free marketing? But all I have to do is show up on a website. It was great until I realized that all the shirts from that brand were starting to look just like mine.
Oh,
Yeah. So here I am. I got a team of folks. They're creatives, right? They're coming up with some great ideas. And next thing you know, I see the brand that's actually asked me to help them is now utilizing all of my brandness.
oh my
Yeah.
God.
So the thing
That's
is, huge
great.
hit, man. But again, then it was a bullet, right? I dodged it. But I also realized that you have to be careful in this business because your name is your namesake, right? There's no other
Mhm.
Kevin Yee. There's
Yeah.
there's only one, and your authenticity is primary to who you are. So I could not disrupt the brand because, man, like everyone you speak it to, it takes a long time to get established in this business. So
Yeah.
overnight, it was like, Coca-Cola getting the secrets, giving away the secrets. So I just couldn't be in that same space anymore. So, and I still know the individual, but I reached out to another person in corporate, a heavy player, and he literally said, "You need to cut your ties." And I'm a tactical person, right? I'm not harsh. I don't carry negativity. It's not good for your soul, right? So
So,
I just made it clear that we were going in a different direction, and it
mm,
was easy. He took everything off his website. The brand was, and plus I did not want to get lawyers invested in this. You know what I mean? So it would have been really. So we actually walked away from this, and everything is still kind of in a good place, which is what I wanted. But it was a learned lesson. It was a learned lesson.
well, Manny, there's just so many stories that I could ask you. I feel like I could do a Joe Rogan like 2 to 3.
Brother,
Honestly, I was like,
that's a huge
shoot.
compliment, man. I'll take that as a huge thank you, brother.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I was
look,
like,
I'll tell you,
man.
some podcasters that I've worked with in the past, they're difficult to try to analyze questions, but you make this natural, man, and I appreciate that.
Thank you. Thank you, man. Yeah, I mean, I would love to see if we could do a part two in the future and stuff like that. But your insights are like one thing about you, man, having this conversation with you, it's like your positivity about things, your transparency, your authenticity. You like live and breathe it because
Brother,
you can
thank you.
literally, even though we're on like a Riverside or like a Zoom type of thing. Like you can literally feel it. So
Oh man,
yeah, man.
I appreciate that so much because, brother, I'm trying to stick core to who I am. I truly believe that you're a representative of everything that people think you need to be, but you need to be true to yourself. I'm the first person I see every day. So,
Yeah.
and I can't be authentic with myself, then I'm losing touch with the rest of reality. I
Yeah.
want to be able to scale a business, maintain depth, personalization, but I also want to be able to be authentic, man, and stay committed. So thank you, man. That's a huge compliment. I really appreciate that.
How do people find you and connect with you?
Ah, brother. Well, fast is fast, man. I'm making time count. I think if you chuck it into the Google, it'll be the first thing that pops up. I hope. If not, I gotta fire some people. LinkedIn,
So
I'm out there. I'm on, yeah, I know, right? But I'm on LinkedIn, of course, Facebook as well, all the social platforms. Manny at Making Time Count, LC.com or www Making Time Count. My information is out there for the masses, man. So I don't shy away from connecting, even if it's for just, hey, I saw Instagram that you wrote, and man, it was amazing, and I needed it that day. You're gonna get that's fire for me because if I wake up and tag something, it's easy for me to know that somebody else is feeling the same positivity. So yeah, bro, it's a must, man. After this, we're definitely gonna be connected, man.
yeah, for sure. 1,000%, man. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast, Manny.
Yes, sir, brother. You take care of yourself, man. Safe travels when you're headed back to the States, man. And thank you again for the opportunity. Pass my best to the team.
I will. Thank you.
You take care.
Okay.
All right.
That's it for this episode of Career Coaching Secrets. If you enjoyed this conversation, you can subscribe on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you're listening to this episode to catch future episodes. This podcast was brought to you by Purple Circle, where we help career coaches scale their business to $100,000 years, $100,000 months, or even $100,000 weeks, all without burning out and making sure that you're making the impact and having the life that you want. To learn more about our community and how we can help you, visit joinpurplecircle.com.